Hello, 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 and welcome to another international break SCOUTCAST brought to you by Fantasy Football Scout. As always, you're joined by me, Andy, FPL Mode, and we're also joined by the two most lovable people in the business. Nacho, how is it going, my man? Is it nice to be with two professionals this week?
Oh, blah, blah, blah. No, it is good to have the trio back,
Joking.
isn't it? Obviously, yeah, no, shout out obviously to Josh and Mo for last week, carrying you two.
I know.
Obviously, holidays I don't take holidays. There's no days off here, As Roy Keane says, it's my job. I do it. So, yeah, no, glad to have the trio back, though. And kind of glad it's the international break a little bit. I think, obviously, you'll see the green arrows on here. I think all of us have got green. Oh, okay. So, well, we've had good weeks, all in all. And I'm looking forward to go through what we got planned on this stream because there's a lot to talk about.
Tell you what, if you're not careful, mate, you'll be on a permanent holiday soon. Hibbo, nice to have nice to have you here with us as well this evening. Yes, you are on a green arrow. How was your holiday last week?
My holiday was good. Centre Parks in Longford, which it's a good holiday for the family, but I came back, I think, more tired than when I went away. So I feel like I need another holiday. But no, FPL wise, I think it's been a bit of a slow start across the board for many managers. And this is it's going to make up our content tonight because we're not doing a regular show. Like we're going to look at maybe wildcards and free hits. But I think it's important to add a wee bit of context on where we're at here at the moment because I had a wee look at chips that have been played so far. And I think in the top 10K at the moment, 20% of people have used their free hit, 45% of people have used their bench boost, 28% have used their triple captain, and 7% have used their wildcard. So I think the message to people is don't panic. Ranks are a wee bit inflated at the minute. So
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I should have said before as well, by the way, I was only joking. Josh and Mo, thank you so much for stepping in for me and Hibbo. We needed to have a bit of a holiday. We've been streaming for 3-4 weeks with Nacho, and you just need that week off sometimes. And it's really nice. We ended up going on our holiday. We were quite bullish on holiday, weren't we, Hibbo? So it was quite nice to be bullish on holiday. Nacho, we're not going to talk about our points this week, but give us a little bit of an inside view. How did your kind of week go without giving it all away before next week's show?
Yeah, decent enough week. Obviously, I won't spoil everything, but I had 2 free transfers. Did I use them? Did I not? We'll reveal next week. But it was an okay week. But as we know, transfer window. Isak obviously signing for Liverpool, Gay crashing through. We had things like Saar potentially injured. Lots and lots of things have happened. So before you know it, I think we're all going to look at our teams for game week 4 and think, oh, like there's going to be some problems to come back to. It just happened so quickly over this international break.
Big time. And, Hibbo was just saying about how many people have played chips already. If you haven't, with all the transfer activity, with all the injuries, with everything that seems to be happening, Hibbo, free hit and wildcard, which is what this stream is all about, they're going to prove popular in game week 4. And when we were looking before the season even started, game week 4 was one of the weeks we said could be good for a wildcard because of all the transfer activity, wasn't it?
I think a lot of managers kind of marked it out, as you say, because the transfer window's closed. There's a bit of counterbalance. I think the counterbalance is we haven't seen those new signings settle in at their new club. And I think there's another bit of important context, if you don't mind, if I kind of freewheel a wee bit in this. So
That's fine.
There's been a bit of a development around Crystal Palace. So they basically beat Fredrikstad and qualified for the Conference League. Okay. Now, there's a train of thought, Ben Crellin and Tal Nadim have been tweeting about this, where they're basically saying that there's a potential if Palace play Millwall in the next round of the EFL Cup, if Palace beat Millwall, go on to round 4, one in round 4. I know there's a lot of permutations here. One in round 4 and qualify for the quarterfinals. There's a potential that Palace are going to have a blank game week 17. So I think that's something to think about in the context of when you play your chips. I know we're going to get the top up by extra transfers for AFCON around game week 16, but I think it would be wise to keep one of the wildcard a free hit for that later point in the season in the event that a blank game week does fall, because the talk is if Palace qualify for the quarterfinals and they play a Premier League team, there's a chance that 4 teams could blank that week. So we kind of need to be prepared for that. So that's kind of my thinking personally when I'm going to deploy the wildcard. I'm kind of thinking to play it a wee bit later. But look, I understand people are looking at their ranks and they're probably thinking, oh, we're in a bit of a mess. But that's why I mentioned chips at the very start, because I do think there's a lot of managers kind of punching the air and jumping up and down saying, oh, I'm like top 500k, but they've used 2 chips. Do you know, when it's not to put them down, it's a long season. And if you haven't used those chips, I think there's a way to really kind of claw your way back on this season.
Yeah. I spent that whole time you were talking trying to figure out who Frederick's dad was. I was like, who the hell is Frederick's dad? Like, who have Crystal Palace beat? And I realised afterwards that it's Frederick's dad or whatever it was. I was thinking, who the hell is Frederick's dad? Anyway, people are in the chat saying, come on, show us your teams. There won't be any teams tonight. There won't be any teams. There won't be any bus teams. There won't be any points. That'll all be next week because it's the international break. This is one, if you are on wildcard or free hit, or you're thinking about it, this is the stream that's going to either convince you or help you out, basically. And as we've already said, but even before pre-season, we were saying this could be a good week to do it. And with everything that's happened, a lot of people are thinking about doing it. So we just want to talk about it a little bit tonight. We've got the fixtures up here so you can see why people are thinking about it. So free hit in game week 4, we've got Liverpool up against Burnley. We've got Arsenal up against Nottingham Forest, who, surprisingly, Forest have not been the great defence we were hoping they would be, conceding 3 to West Ham after the 70th minute. Man City have Man United. Got Chelsea against Brentford. Newcastle have Wolves at home. Bournemouth have Brighton at home. Bournemouth been brilliant so far. Fulham have Leeds at home. Crystal Palace have Sunderland at home. And then we've also got Everton and West Ham, who both have home fixtures, but we'll see how we're looking there. I mean, straight away, Nacho, when you're looking, if you are thinking about free hit 4, straight away you're looking, are you thinking there's some fixtures that are standing out for you in terms of assets you would want to invest in?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, game week 4 is definitely one of those game weeks where I understand the appeal because some people might be sat there with Nottingham Forest players who, of course, are away against Arsenal, and that game week 3 fixture for Forest was not good at all. Kind of really put a damper on those that went for the likes of Chris Wood and obviously Anderson and Murillo. And obviously, even if they're Arsenal as well, Forest isn't an easy game. You don't look at that and think they're going to win that comfortably. So in terms of the standout fixtures, I think Liverpool-Burnley obviously is a standout one, but understanding right now what that Liverpool team's going to look like might be a bit difficult by the time we get to game week 4. Will it be Ekitike that starts? Will it be Alexander Isak? How does that affect Gakpo's minutes? But for a 1 game week punt, I do think by the time we get to that deadline, we probably can understand the 3 best Liverpool picks who are absolutely going to be needed in a free hit team. And of course, we'll show a free hit team later. Also, in terms of like teams that stand out, I think Palace, of course, at home against Sunderland. The problem is right now, injuries right now. Yeah. We don't know exactly how they're going to react off the back of the Gay situation. I would like to think they're professional enough. Gays are professional. They will just come back in game week 4 like nothing's happened. But with the injury to Sarr, how's that going to impact Mateta now with Eze, of course, already left? That's another huge player out of that team if that is true. So I think a free hit in game week 4 is absolutely viable, but I wouldn't personally be activating it right now until we get really close to that deadline. I don't see any need to hit that button right now just because so much can happen.
Interested. Just before I follow up on that, Hibbo, you might want to take your snout a little bit further away from the microphone. Nacho, there you go. Nacho, you say that about free hit, you wouldn't activate it until a little bit later. Price changes have been crazy so far. The price changes down in particular. There seems to be like 20 a day or something silly, doesn't there? And, you know, there's 3 or 4 going up as well. Would you say, obviously you said wait, is that because you'd be wanting to wait for information? Or do you think if you're kind of set on free hit, playing it earlier would be better to try and get the team that you really do want because of price changes?
Yeah, to be fair, I think that is a really good shout. I probably am coming from a bit of biased perspective here where my team looks okay. I think if your team's looking pretty drab right now and you know the free hit is your only answer, then yeah, the advice is to use it early. Like you said, jump on the players that are anticipated to rise in price so you're not priced out of those and sell off the ones that you definitely don't want who are dropping. So no, I agree on that one, mate, for sure. I think activating it early doors if you are certain you want to do it. But if you are 50-50 on a wild card or a free hit, then I do think I'd rather just ride out those price changes because we always know what happens. Start of the international break, prices go crazy, and then for 7 days it is just dead. Then the back end we get it all accelerated once again.
Yeah, I mean, Hibbo, is there a bit of a worry that some people are going to go into this week free hitting, which it looks like an okay week to free hit, obviously, but then of course they get their team back in game week 5, and that team that they had before is full of still players that weren't performing anyway. So if you've got players like Watkins, if you've got a Sarr that's now injured or a Cunha, is there a worry that if you free hit, it's not sorting out the players that you've already got that have maybe not been so good, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I think having had a quick play around with drafts, I suppose, for wildcards and free hits, and I know we've looked at, and we will look at the fixtures in terms of goals and clean sheets, projections and clean sheet percentages. Ultimately, if we're looking at the free hit, we're going to be led by the markets for the week. They see who's potentially going to be the big hitters. But there's a lot of crossover between the team that you would free hit and the team that you would wildcard under. Like, for example, on a free hit, you're more than likely going to have triple Palace. On a free hit, you're more than likely going to have triple Liverpool. But I think those ring true for the wildcard as well. So I think the point you're making is absolutely nailing the head. If your team's in a bit of a state right now, it could be worth playing the wildcard rather than re-inheriting your legacy team, I suppose, getting them back again in game week 5. I think definitely it's a shout.
Yeah. Just seen a few people in the chat, Hibbo, saying about, no, doesn't matter about price changes. With that chat I just had with Nacho about price changes, doesn't matter about price changes. Information is the most important thing. I would say that there's an argument this season with how aggressive price changes are and how much is happening. Is there an argument to be said that actually being aggressive with transfers is the way to go this year? Because someone, obviously, he's playing the game, but he's also in charge of the game in Mark Southerns. He made both of his transfers on Monday, and he's up to about 100.6, 100.7 in team value. I'm seeing some managers that are below 100 million now. And all of a sudden, when you try and make a free hit team or you try and wildcard, you got less money than what you started with. So is there a case to be said that actually playing aggressive could be the way to play it to start the season?
I think there's always an argument for it. Like, I suppose whenever I started kind of originally playing FPL, there was a lot of focus on building team value as a strategy.
Yeah.
And as we've kind of moved on throughout the years, it's kind of diminished a wee bit. There's a bit of a split in the camp where people like it, whereas some people prefer like ultimate information. Like for me, say for example, going into this international break, I know Mark used 2 transfers. I would be inclined not to do that, but I think what people do in that scenario was they think, well, look, I've got the fallback of using a chip. I'm thinking about maybe wildcarding anyway. So if they have 2 free transfers, they're thinking, I'll play these now. And if anything else happens over the next week or 2 weeks, I'm just going to wildcard anyway. So maybe that's Mark's position. I'm not too sure. But no, I think there's times to be a wee bit more aggressive with price. Like for me personally, I think there's times to be a wee bit more aggressive with price. And there's times that, especially in an international break, I'll almost switch off. And while you'll see a lot of kind of early price movement, I think after about 2 or 3 days, the market tends to slow down. It just stagnates. People aren't thinking about Premier League. They're not thinking about FPL. International football's on instead. So, no, I think there's also the argument that once we get past kind of game week 4, 5, 6, 7, when engagement starts to drop in the game slightly, assuming it's going to a bit, we start seeing people stop making those early transfers as well. So then prices kind of seem to stabilise a wee bit more. So no, for me, I'm definitely more cautious, and I definitely wouldn't be making early transfers going on the IB wouldn't be for me.
It's an interesting one. I feel like there is a case for it this year with how aggressive it is and how many free transfers we get as well. And I think just like people were obsessed with DEFCON at one point, I feel like maybe people can be obsessed with rolling these transfers. We can go up to 5, but actually building team value can be just as good. People in the chat saying, yes, you can obviously build team value, but points is the most important thing. But if you can nail both, I think you're kind of winning there, aren't you? But let's have a look at some free hit odds here then, Nacho. So these are the odds on how many goals are going to be scored in game week 4. So this is just for game week 4. Yes, it shows all the other game weeks, but we're just focusing on game week 4. In terms of the team that's expected to score the most goals, we've got Liverpool at 2.44, then Crystal Palace in second, 2.24, which, as you've alluded to already, there's some injuries there. Wharton out, Sarr out, not looking too good there in terms of their team. Man City in third, then we've got Newcastle, Arsenal, Chelsea and Bournemouth all above 1.70. Chelsea and Bournemouth who are below 2.0. So we kind of got the teams there we can see that are going to score or projected to score the most goals in those. When you're looking at those top 6 there, Nacho, Liverpool, Crystal Palace, Man City, Newcastle, Arsenal, Chelsea, and then Bournemouth, I suppose we can put in there too. What are you thinking in terms of attacking assets from those teams? Are we looking at, obviously we've got Salah, but is Wirtz still in our thoughts? Is it Gakpo now? Is Isak sneaking in? We've obviously got, Mateta, if Sarr is out. We've got Munoz still. Who's kind of are you looking at from those top 7 teams and thinking, if I was on free hit, I'd go for those?
Yeah, I think with the Liverpool situation, first and foremost, I think there is definitely a strategy where you could just lean all in on a triple attack. But of course, you have to also have the players from key teams as well. So, for example, you could go for, if you really think it, I don't believe Isak starts in game week 4, by the way, but if we had the news, Isak, Salah and Gakpo or Wirtz. But that sounds fantastic, but there's so much money invested. And then you have to build a team with the key man penalty taker, Mateta, who's a bit of a non-negotiable, I think, in that Crystal Palace team. Haaland in that Man City team, I think if you're a free hit in, you are going to be very tempted to put him in, because even though he hasn't been scoring hat tricks like he done last season at the start, he's still ticking over with really good underlying numbers, even though the City team haven't actually hit the ground running yet. I think Newcastle is a really difficult one to predict in terms of attacking players, and of the 6 teams, even 7, I wouldn't say there's a key talisman right now in that Newcastle team to really say to myself, he is the guy that I want on a free hit. So I feel Newcastle might actually be one you might lean towards defensively rather than offensively. And also I probably would say the same about Arsenal in some extent. So when I look at these teams, I think Semenyo and João Pedro stand out for the 7th and 6th. And then it's all about tripling up on Liverpool, Mateta, Erling Haaland, and then what you can fit alongside those.
Is it quite hard to pick strikers for this week, do you think? With, like you said, you've got Pedro, you've got Gyökeres, you've got Haaland, you've got Mateta, and if you wanted to sneak like an Isak in, picking 3 probably going to be quite tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's enough forwards for game week 4. I think it's more a case of, from a budget perspective, trying to squeeze them all in, because, like I said, I think if we go for the assumption that Hugo Ekitike starts in game week 4 and Isak maybe gets 15 off the bench or whatever, then I think there is definitely an argument to lean towards Hugo Ekitike. You know you got him for 1 week. You know you haven't got a problem with him beyond that. But I think you could have a budget front 3 of Mateta, João Pedro, and then you could even put an Evan Nielsen in there if you really wanted to with his game, which isn't too bad against Brighton. So, yeah, I think Haaland's the big one for me. I think that's the one that's going to accommodate a lot of your money in your teams. But I think with their fixture at home against Man United, who still haven't looked fantastic, he's a tough guy to ignore.
Yeah. Hibbo, what are you thinking about that kind of top 7 for goals? Have you got anybody in there that we haven't mentioned that you think is worth mentioning?
I think Liverpool and Crystal Palace effectively speak for themselves. Do you know, like we know who their good options are. Salah. You would probably have Virgil on there if you're thinking from a defensive perspective. I do agree with like the 1 week punt for somebody else. There was a quote from Isak today where Late Riser shared it on Twitter, where Isak basically said he hasn't played much pre-season at all. He's been basically training individually on his own away from a first team. And he was really kind of putting the cry on as if, he was hard done by, where really he tried to force a transfer all summer. But I don't think Isak's going to start. What I will say about Ekitike is he won't get the full game, in my opinion. I think Isak will come on and there'll be like a changing of the guard. And this will be him. And with Isak and the team, Liverpool are just going to look super strong. But I think there's an argument. I think they plump for like Gakpo or Wirtz as your second kind of Liverpool attacking option. And I think looking at these projected goals, it makes a lot of sense. They have at least 2 Liverpool attackers. It would have been nice to have 2 Palace attackers, but Sarr's looking like he's maybe injured, although the source isn't particularly great. The only kind of, I suppose, surprise for me here would be maybe somebody from Newcastle. If you were trying to shoehorn Haaland, I think, on their free hit team, maybe somebody like Harvey Barnes in the midfield against Wolves. It's a wee bit out of left field, but I don't hate it as a 1 week punt because they're projected well for goals. I think Gordon's still out of the team. Wuss has just joined. Wolfenstadt's just joined. So I think those guys are good to continue this week. So I think he could be somebody that maybe helps to supplement a really kind of big hitting team. Palmer's obviously, of course, there for Chelsea. And I think if we look at most engaged teams, they sold Palmer last week. So they're not going to have him against Brentford if he's fit.
Well, I was going to ask Nacho, actually, not about Palmer. I was going to ask Nacho about the penalty taker at the weekend, who took the penalty instead of Pedro, that I was absolutely devastated with because I captained Pedro. Enzo Fernandez, mate, loves getting those DEFCONs as well. What do you think about Enzo?
Yeah, like firstly, am I surprised? I probably am surprised because Enzo has been a bit of a indifferent penalty taker at Chelsea. Obviously, Cole Palmer has just been the guy basically whenever he has been on the field. So we haven't really seen anybody outside of Palmer for a little while now. But Enzo coming in at 6.6 million, I think he had that price rise not long ago when he had that game week 2 performance. I do think Enzo is actually an okay pick. I think I was quite clear. I really didn't think he was an FPL option this season. I've got egg on my face already going into game week 4 because he's had back-to-back double-digit returns. But I do think with the absence of potentially Cole Palmer once again and Delap being out, I think Chelsea are going to have to really rely on these sort of key players to step up. And sometimes when you've got a recipe that works, Enzo arriving late in the box, that kind of box crashing sort of run that he makes. Whereas I think Maresca was looking to play him a bit deeper in build-up phases. Because our wingers haven't necessarily hit the ground running yet, I think Gittins is going to take a while. I think Estevao's look good, but goal scoring wise, I think he's still really raw. He's going to have to rely on these sort of players to step up, Cucurella as well. So I think Enzo probably will be a bit more advanced than I was anticipating. And I don't mind him as a game week 4 free hit punt. And even if you wanted to look for an enabler, he's okay. But I just wish he was 5 million because 6.6, you're going into that price bracket now where you're competing up against a lot of other players who play effectively in front threes, like a Jack Grealish, for example.
Jack Grealish. We'll be talking about him when we get to wildcards, I'm sure. Looking at defences as well then, there's only one team that is projected to get above 50% for a clean sheet in game week 4, and that is Arsenal. They're always high up there. Best defence, obviously Saliba went off injured against Liverpool, but it doesn't look like it's going to be anything long term, but obviously he did go off injured. Liverpool in second with 47%, then Palace with 44%. Newcastle next with 40%, Fulham 39%, Man City 34%, and then Everton with 30% there. Now, we're looking at defences there. Obviously, we haven't mentioned Arsenal attack much when we were talking about if you were picking a team for free hit. Hibbo, is it pretty easy picking an Arsenal defensive asset for a free hit in game week 4?
I think so, although on paper, maybe a fixture against Nottingham Forest can be kind of tricky, although at the weekend they were completely blown away by West Ham, so that's a counterbalance. I think Gabriel is probably the standout pick from Arsenal, and looking at these clean sheet odds from, by the way, all this data is from Elevenify, so shout out to him. Yeah. I wouldn't be picking anybody with less than a 40% chance of a clean sheet. Players from teams with less than that chance. So, I think Arsenal are on there. Gabriel's obviously pretty good. Liverpool, Virgil speaks for himself. Palace kind of have a range of options. You've got Munoz, who's attacking and who could maybe be a bit more attacking now that they've lost Sarr as well. Newcastle, they've had a pretty indifferent start to the season. Clean sheet last time out against Wolves. But maybe Sarr or somebody like that could become an option as well on the free hit. I think it depends how much budget you've got to spend, and if you really kind of squeeze your team up, you might be putting some Newcastle options on there as well. But no, we didn't mention Arsenal attack, but I think Gyökeres is probably a lock at home to Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, I think you just said there about Crystal Palace having quite a few assets. Munoz, Lacroix, Richards, all been great for DEFCON. Even Munoz has been great for DEFCON as well. And Munoz, we saw again, he gets forward obviously so much. He's probably the best defensive asset in the game at the moment in terms of attacking ability as well. I think Nacho's done this when we look at the team a bit later. Nacho, a double up in Crystal Palace defence, or even a triple up, if you're thinking about getting their attacker as well. Are you going to be slightly worried if Wharton's out, if Sarr's out, with Gahey being unsettled, all that kind of stuff? Does it put a bit of a dampener on it for you, or do you think you'd still go for it?
Yeah, I think Wharton now is important. I think with the system that they have, Wharton's one of those players that is very difficult to replace. I think, of course, they got Hughes who could play in there, who has been. Kamada can drop into that double pivot, but really Kamada's been the one player on that left-hand side, so they could bring in Devaney to replace Sarr, but it feels too many things being displaced in that team. Started with Eze. If we add Wharton to the equation there and Sarr, I think you've lost the real balance of that entire team. And I would then go as far as saying that the Palace game becomes possibly a bit more of a low-scoring affair, that maybe we do want to lean towards the double defence as opposed to any sort of double attack, because I just don't know if the double attack even exists for us to own with the injuries we're talking about.
Yeah, even Jeremy Pino's been recalled from the Spain squad, I believe, because of an ankle injury, but that could just be an international break one. Claire FPL said that in the chat as well. So let's have a look at the free hit draft, shall we? Because Nacho very, very kindly took some time out of his day to make us a lovely free hit draft. And it does have that Crystal Palace double defence we were just talking about. So he's got Sanchez in goal. Then he's got Lacroix and Munoz at the back, double Crystal Palace defence. Anderson also at the back there, who been a killer for DEFCON most of the time. Not as much of a killer as Anderson in midfield for DEFCON, but we won't talk about his 11 defensive contributions 3 weeks in a row. Then we got Salah in the middle with Josh King, who wrongly, Nacho, got his goal ruled out at the weekend. Then we've also got Gakpo, Enzo. We've got Pedro, Haaland, Mateta up top with Dewsbury Hall, Rodon and Esteve at the back with on the bench with Dubravka as well. Nacho, just talk us through your thinking for this team. I'm not going to lie, it's looking pretty nice, but obviously Haaland and Salah take up a lot of the money, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when I was building this free hit team, I'll probably put it out there, I wouldn't exactly go for this team, but I think this is where a lot of people are going to land in terms of a structure where Salah and Haaland are going to be very difficult to ignore. I know a lot of people are starting to hate on Mo Salah, but look, if you go without him away against Burnley, you are kind of asking for a bit of trouble, so just be cautious there. So I think what we need to understand with this free hit team is that you've got to make sacrifices. Now, is it ideal me rolling out with someone like a King in midfield? No, the fixture's good, but do I want to be free hitting with a player like that in the team, and also someone like Enzo Fernandez, who could be playing in a bit more of a deeper role and creative against a Brentford team possibly? So I like the team, but I just want to say that you can, if you are quote unquote brave enough to get rid of one of Haaland or Mo Salah, you could build like a really, really strong team. For example, if you downgrade Haaland to Ekitike as a 1 week punt against Burnley, then all of a sudden you freed up like, what's that, like 6 million to basically invest elsewhere. So that upgrades King to basically any midfielder in the game. It improves Enzo. So I think you can go down this route. I imagine there are alternatives out there that people have built that are probably a bit more optimal, but I think this covers a lot of the bases. I think double Palace defense is a safe way to go. But with that Wharton injury, which I didn't really know too much about, I would be a little less bullish on a clean sheet, because I think he's so important to both defensive shape and the way that they progress the ball in the final third.
I think they came out originally saying 6 weeks for Wharton, and then today it sounds like it's more like 3 weeks, but it does sound like he's probably going to be out for that game, which, like you said, is a big difference. But Hibbo, is there anything glaringly missing from this team, do you think? A few people in the chat have said about lack of Arsenal, for instance. Is there anything you'd say, or I try and maybe move things around there?
I don't think glaring. I think it's a good draft. What I would potentially do with this team, and I think it's an option in free hit this week, because when we were looking at Crystal Palace, we were thinking Sarr. Okay, so I think the needle's moved a bit. If he's injured, we obviously can't pick him. Nacho's already said that, well, like maybe the new optimal's double Palace defence instead. I think what people could do is they could play a 4-3-3, which sounds a bit unconventional, but with DEFCON, it's maybe possible. So like what you could do is you could maybe move Haaland down to Gyökeres, you save about 5 million. You could bring Enzo up to Palmer. You could take Dewsbury Hall down to a 4.5, and you would have enough money to beef up at least one of your defenders. If I was going double Palace, I wouldn't go for Munoz and Lacroix. I wouldn't spend that amount of money. I would probably drop one like Lacroix down to a 4.5 or something like that. But I do think it's maybe lacking a Virgil, a Gabriel, somebody like that that's going to supplement the defence. You could maybe look at a 4.5 instead of Sanchez, but I do think that there's the option of playing 4 at the back, 3 in the middle, say for example Salah, Gakpo, Palmer, João Pedro, Gyökeres, Mateta. I don't think that's impossible with the budget that we have. I think you could work a team out of that.
Yeah, I quite like the idea of maybe beefing up and getting a few of the Arsenal boys in there. But I mean, Nacho, if you were to go with this team, is it Haaland you'd be captaining, or would it be Salah?
Yeah, sorry for those watching right now. Captain would not be on Gakpo, just to say.
Yeah.
But I think the numbers for Haaland have just been really good this season. I think
they
like
have,
he's close to like 4xG, isn't it? My worry right now with Liverpool is that with the way that they're invested, with Wirtz coming into the team, with Ekitike, we haven't seen anything right now to suggest that everything's flowing through Mo Salah like it was under Arne Slot, where they basically just accommodated Mo Salah to tell him, don't track back. We're just going to do all the work for you to feed you in the final third. And I'm starting to think, oh, are we in a position right now where the goal share is just going to be significant across the board? And yes, there will be weeks where jackpot Mo Salah bags a hat trick. But I think with this Man City team right now, the way that Man United are playing, I mean, if they go into this game with Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro in midfield, even though Man City have been very ropey, I expect them to score goals. And I know where they're coming from. It is going to be in some form Haaland picking up big chances. So, yeah, I think I would put the captaincy on Erling Haaland to just back the fact that Man United have been so ropey. Conceding 2 against Burnley is probably enough for me to think Haaland will be my captain.
And it's tough, isn't it? Because if you don't go Haaland, who the hell do you go with for City? So if you downgrade Haaland, I don't think you go City or anywhere else, do you? So obviously then all of a sudden you're looking at a team and thinking, I've got no City. But then home to Man United, I mean, we've seen them absolutely destroy Man United at home before. So there you go. There's your free hit. We'll have a quick look at Wildcard as well, because I'm not going to lie, and Hibbo, I know Nacho alluded this to us before we started streaming. Looking at the fixtures in game week 4, yeah, it looks nice for a free hit in terms of there's some really nice fixtures, maybe some players you don't already own, you can double up on certain teams. When you're looking at wildcard though, looking at game week 5 and game week 6, wildcard in game week 4, it doesn't seem like an easy week to wildcard. Like with all the transfers that have happened already, with the injuries that have happened, so obviously there's going to be some changes, and these injuries, you know, they're only going to be lasting, what was it? SAR's out for 6 weeks, so he'll be back by 6 or 7 potentially, whatever it is. I don't think it's that easy to wildcard. I feel like there's so many unknowns. I don't really know who's that good at the moment. You know, I'm looking at someone like Villa and thinking, do I really want to lose all my Villa assets, considering the fixtures are still really nice, for instance? Do I really want to be tripling up on Crystal Palace when they've got these injuries and there's so much unrest there as well? Is this the ideal time to wildcard, in your opinion?
Definitely not. But I understand why people want to do it, because they feel as if they've started slow. They maybe have an idea of what they think the best team is right now. I don't know about you boys, but I don't, you know what, like I don't think 3 game weeks is enough information. Like I'm kind of thinking 6 game weeks probably isn't even enough information, but I think we're starting to glean certain bits of stuff. But I think building a wildcard team this week, you essentially have to build a team for the long term. So that means you have to take the Arsenal players on now, despite the fact that they play Man City very soon. Now, the Forest fixture is a good one this week, but like me personally, I'm happy to wait until game week 7 to bring my Arsenal players in. I think the other flip side is, if you wildcard this week, you're probably going to be Man City light, because if you're wildcarding, you're going to pick, for me, I think you have to pick between Salah and Haaland. You know, they're both kind of firing, or well, Haaland's firing right now at the minute. But you have to go under this week, I think, with Salah, given the fixture against Burnley. I think that goes without saying. So that nearly leaves wildcarders this week a bit light for game week 6 when Man City have Burnley at home. You know, so what are they going to do? Are they going to wildcard in game week 4 and then free hit in game week 6? And then you're left in a scenario, if there is a blank game week around game week 17, you're using up all those transfers for AFCON straight away. And people will say, oh, but that's what they're there for. There's no problem with it. I think, look, ultimately that's what strategy's about. Other managers will be planning this out and thinking, I'll get those free transfers in game week 16. I won't need to use them, but you will. And that's how people will move one step ahead of the game. But I think one consideration for people wildcarding this week is think about bench boosting in game week 5. You know, because your team's as fresh as it's potentially going to be now. Carrying the bench boost long term once the wild card's gone, it's going to be hard to try and set that up. So if I was wildcarding this week, it would definitely be a consideration for me to bench boost in 5.
I keep looking at wildcard teams, and I'm just looking at it thinking, you're going to want Arsenal, you're going to want Man City because their fixtures are nice later on. You're going to want probably Pedro most likely, But like Arsenal and City play each other in game week 5, and I just keep looking at the teams and thinking they're going to look so bad in game week 5. Chelsea have United in game week 5 as well. You're probably going to want some Bournemouth. They're home to Newcastle in game week 5. And it keeps screaming at me that it's going to look good in game week 4, and you're going to maybe get some team value build up, which is quite nice. But then all of a sudden in game week 5, it's not going to look as nice. And Nacho, you obviously built the wildcard draft for us, which I'll bring up on the screen in a minute. Was it a really simple task, or was it quite tricky?
Oh, no, it was awful. Like,
No.
I was sat there trying to build a team, and I was struggling, like, so bad. Because it's like you said, it's really difficult because it's so conflicting right now. Villa's opening 3 have been disastrous. The combination of Rodgers and Watkins is just non-existent right now. But I look at the next 4. Everton, I think, is really tough. It's worth noting. I'm not sure what the status is on Branthwaite. But then Sunderland, Fulham and Burnley, like any other time, if you didn't know the opening 3 fixtures, you'd be going in on Villa. So I think that's a big problem right now in terms of understanding what have we seen in the opening 3 game weeks. They're obviously all gone on international break, so the managers are only going to have a couple of days with them once they all arrive back from duty, carrying niggles, carrying knocks, what be. So I think we're really in a tough spot right now in game week 4, where these new signings, what are they going to do in the team? What's people like Harvey Elliott going to do in Aston Villa's side? So that's why I think in a game week 4 wildcard, your team has to be in a real bad situation to activate it, because I think the next 3 game weeks, 4 to 6, is going to be the ones where we really gain that information of the new signings integrated into the teams. And then 6 game weeks worth of information, I think, just paints such a bigger picture than that of the first 3.
Yeah, it's a really tough one. And I mean, Hibbo, we're saying all this. We sound quite anti-wildcard at the moment, don't I? But is there a situation where people are out there where a wildcard does make sense? You know, they've had an awful start, or their team's in disarray. Is it the end of the world if they wildcard right now?
No, I don't think it's the end of the world if people wildcard now, because it depends where you're playing the game. You know, and ultimately, like, we play the game to engage with the Premier League. We play the game to enjoy ourselves. I think the fact that we have first half season chips, you do have that free hit as a fallback later. You know, like you can change things up at a later point. You are going to have those AFCON transfers later. Like, I've been talking about it from a more kind of, I suppose, strategic point of view. But that's thinking about the game as like 38 game weeks. But for people that are just looking to go out and smash it and have a bit of fun, if you don't like your team, definitely the option's there to change it up in wildcard. But look, I think he's made a good point about Aston Villa. Like, for me, like, I own Watkins. Villa haven't been good. Watkins hasn't been good. He's had a few big chances. But those like Sunderland, Fulham, Burnley fixtures from like 5, 6 and 7, like, I have to hold him for those. You know, there was no point in me starting with Watkins and selling them before those 3 fixtures. And again, like, that would be a bit of advice if people are looking at their team now and thinking, oh, Watkins is a problem. I think after we get past Everton, providing the minutes are still there, I think he looks like a good buy with those 3 fixtures in a block. So, no, I think a lot of times what you could do is the best option is to even roll a transfer. Like, last week I made 2 transfers. And to be completely honest, I could have rolled the 3 and I would have been maybe no worse off.
You are not going to own Watkins in game week 7, Hibbo. You're going to wildcard. He's going to leave
Against
your
Burnley.
team. You're going to wildcard in game week 7. You're going to have Gyökeres and Haaland, and you're going to be going nowhere near Watkins.
I won't wildcard in game week 7.
What?
Dun, dun, dun.
I'm thinking about wildcarding in game week 13.
Damn.
Whoa. Hello. God,
Someone's
just
been
drop that one in
planning,
there.
Christ.
Where's your wildcard draft for game week 13 then?
We'll come back in game week 13.
All right, we'll do that.
Give
Let's have a
reason to
look.
subscribe.
Let's have a look at Nacho's wildcard draft then. So, some similarities, some differences, obviously, to the free hit, which is what we want to see. Sanchez in goal. Then we got Lacroix Senesi, who, by the way, has absolutely smashed it recently. Anderson. Then we got Salah, King, Bruno Fernandes, and Reinders in the middle, with Pedro, Haaland, and Mateta up top. We've got another Anderson on the bench there, with Van der Ven and Rodon and Dubravka as well. Nacho, you said this was a lot trickier to make than the free hit team, which I completely agree with. I think free hit team kind of makes itself. The wildcard team is tricky. What did you like about this team, and what did you find tricky when you were making it?
Didn't like a lot. I'm going to be honest. I didn't like a lot because I think whenever you wildcard, you also got to be taking into consideration the ownership of players. It just is part of the game. So I look at Chelsea's upcoming fixtures: Brentford, Man United, Brighton, Liverpool, Forest. Like, it's not an easy run, so you could go against João Pedro, but with everything that's happening right now, I just feel like he's in. Mateta, I just think you've got to put him in. Salah against Burnley. So when you start building a wildcard team, unless you really are brave and you go against these highly owned players, you start to put these players in, start to drop in the cheaper ones I discussed, Anderson and Reinders. Before you know it, you look at your team and think, well, there's only a few positions that I can play with. And then the big decision that everybody's going to have in game week 4, do you go Salah, do you go Haaland, or do you go both? Now, with this wildcard, again, I want to do it just to show you what you can do, because Bruno Fernandes is sat there right now. I totally understand why people might be thinking, why is he in this team? It's a lot of money. But I do think he is just the perfect player to hold for the next 4 game weeks. We've seen that he picks up points in every single department. He's creating loads in this Man United team. So I think he's fine. What I like about this is you've got yourself covered for game week 4 for Liverpool. You've got Haaland in for game week 6. Get yourself to game week 7 with 3 free transfers in the bank. When the fixtures start to swing for Arsenal, and whenever there's a wild card in, you can decide when you get to game week 7 if you want to then sacrifice Erling Haaland or Mo Salah. Now, spoiler alert, you ain't going to want to get rid of Erling Haaland because you'll have Brentford and then Everton. So it probably is going to have to be Mo Salah, but I just don't want to part ways with him right now, personally, with Burnley and Everton up next. So delay that decision till later, 3 free transfers in the bank, and then you can use the cash to deploy it in Arsenal players, which really is what everybody's going to move towards.
Yeah. When I was looking at this team, the thing, obviously, I like the fact you've got Senesi in there because I think Bournemouth fixtures really do take a turn. I'd love to be able to get Semenyo in this team. And obviously with Reinders, King and Anderson, you're not going to be getting rid of Salah and Bruno, like you just said, unless I suppose you move Bruno down to Semenyo. But that means you're holding Bruno for 2 tough fixtures. And then move him out for Semenyo doesn't make a lot of sense. So Semenyo was one I thought I wanted to have a look at to see whether I could get him in. Hibbo, looking at this wild card for yourself, anything you think? I mean, it does scream to me. Having Bruno, Salah and Haaland seems a lot, doesn't it? Do you think that's the first thing I thought of when I looked at this team? Do you agree, or do you think actually Haaland and Salah you would go with?
No, I do agree. I don't think I would go for both. And again, it's very similar to the free hit. And this is the point I tried to make earlier. I think there's a lot of crossover between what's good in free hit and what's good in wildcard. And that's probably, if your team's in a bad shape, that's why it makes sense to be probably wildcard. But I think Haaland could come down to Gyökeres here. And it gives you a bit more money. I think at a wildcard, I don't think I would keep Reinders.
Really?
No, I don't think I would.
He's a 90-minute man. Cherky now out for 2 months as well.
Paqueta caught the eye for me at the weekend. I think we were looking at Paqueta. He obviously took the West Ham penalty and he scored and did the phone call thing, kissed the badge. So he's staying. He obviously hasn't transferred out. He did good for Defcon at the weekend. I think he's priced at about 5.9. And given that we like penalty takers, I think he'd be one for me. But I do think the hand money that you save, you can beef up a wee bit in defence. Like you could be putting Virgil in there, like you could be putting like a second Palace defender in there. I think Anderson's okay. Pedro's in this. I think there is an option to drop Haaland down and basically go for, you won't like this because you're Pedro fanboys, Watkins and Gyökeres.
This guy.
Sorry.
Matera.
Pedro's the 4th highest scoring player in the game. What were you being like this for?
He was better.
He's been so lucky.
Oh, stop it.
Pedro.
He was unlucky not to get a penalty at the weekend. You take your name.
No.
You take his name out of your mouth. Disgusting.
Listen. This is what has happened with Pedro.
Listen.
Pedro went from being a player that was going to play 60 minutes a game. Suddenly, all Chelsea's forwards have either transferred out, dropped injured, and now suddenly he's a 90-minute man. And then
Foresight.
Foreskin. Not only that, but then you thought you would get penalties as well. Come on, for God's sake.
Sorry, who did you start with? Oh, Thiago. Oh.
Thiago scored at the weekend, and he should have took the penalty. He should have took the penalty.
He'll probably take the
Shari
next one because
Shari
why did he take it?
Shari must have penalty. But no, I do think overall this is a pretty good draft. I do understand the Pedro love on now because I think his minutes have definitely gone up. The Delap injury has been a bit of a game changer. Having to recall Mark Gahey from loan from Sunderland just showed the lack of options they have at centre forward. So I think he's going to play the lion's share of minutes. So I do like it, but I do think dropping Haaland down to like a Gyökeres can help you beef up a couple of those defensive positions for me.
I do feel sorry for those people with triple Chelsea that got Gu back that now have to transfer one of those out.
It's kind of funny.
It is kind of funny. Yeah, I think if it was me, I think I'd have Gyökeres in this team now, just because I feel like if I was on wildcard, I know I'm going to want him eventually, and I feel like it's a transfer save later on down the line. But like Nacho's found this week, you want Haaland and you want Salah because you're not going to not have Salah against Burnley. So automatically it's where do you get the money? And Pedro and Mateta make a lot of sense now at the moment as well. So it's not easy at all.
Can I just make a quick point? I thought Josh King was a Norwegian Josh King, but it's a completely different person.
Stop it! No, you didn't.
I did. I thought it was the guy that used to play for Bournemouth.
I made that joke. I made that joke earlier on in the season.
I know you did, but I thought there was a joke previously that Josh King was English as well. Like, I thought that was what your joke was. But I saw the goal that was this loud, and it was, oh my God, some of the refereeing decisions at the weekend were absolutely abysmal. Like that penalty that Enzo scored for Chelsea. Pedro handles the ball and the build-up. Jesus, don't even get me started.
Don't get Nacho started on it.
But Fulham's goal should never have been disallowed. Yeah. And then I saw Josh King and realised, right, this is a completely different person.
Dear God. We've just had 200 people leave the chat. Nacho, based on the wildcard you've managed to make today, have you been tempted to wildcard yourself?
No.
Have you been tempted to free hit?
I like the Liverpool temptation, but no. The answer is no. Nah. You guys?
Hibbo, any temptation to free hit or wildcard?
Sorry, I was on mute. No, none.
No. I won't be. There was some temptation to wildcard because of price changes and just the way the season started. And there's some players where I just like we've been saying tonight, 3 weeks is just not enough time to gather data and make good decisions about who we think is going to be good moving forward. And with everything happening with transfers, it's tough. That is not us saying though that wildcarding now isn't going to work. There's going to be people that wildcard that absolutely smash it. So we'll see how it goes. FPL rank chasers in the chat, by the way, saying, wonder how the community teams are doing. We'll let you know next week, mate. We're not going to talk about that. But we had over 500 people join us tonight, which is absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much for the people that have joined us. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes if you want to chuck in some questions, because we finished in good time, 49 minutes. It's not too bad. And we only wanted to give you a short little one just to whet your appetite ready for next week. But chuck us in some questions if you would like, and we will answer as many as possible in about 3 minutes. We'll give you 3 minutes. FPL Zeitgall, by the way, says Nathan Bacon is at 8K. He uses all his chips, doesn't he? He did that once before, didn't he?
He does.
He loves it. Absolutely loves it.
Zem says Verts is a poor man's Ward Prowse. I know. Fina says, is Verts the new Werner? What do you reckon, Nacho?
Timo Verts?
Absolutely not. Verts will be an absolute success this season.
Will he? He's struggling a bit at the moment.
Oh.
Nah, he's a baller, absolute baller.
Yeah. Attaboy says, looking at your wildcard and free hit, is Sanchez the best goalkeeper going forward, Hibbo?
I don't think so.
Who would you go for?
I think there's an option to lock in somebody maybe long term. I think come around game week 7, we're all going to want to have 3 Arsenal players. So maybe Raya's one of those. I don't know.
Not Donnarumma, 5.5?
Oh, yeah.
Has he been added to the game?
He has, yeah. 5.5.
I don't think I would go there.
No.
Ait Nuri, when he's fat and playing, looks as if he's going to start a lot of games, and he was kind of, he's looked a good option for you and your team so far. He's done DEFCON so far, so I think
he's been awful. He's been awful. Got me 9 points first week, then 1 point, then 0 this week. He can get in the bin. Get in the bin.
Deserve.
ran to the bin. Ugh. Andrew Griffiths says, why would you go Gyökeres over Isak? One player is proven, one player isn't. I mean, Nacho, one thing about obviously wildcard in this week, we don't know whether Isak will play. Most likely he won't. He'll be on the bench that week. Is it better to wait a couple of weeks and see about Isak?
Yeah, I think we've said, haven't we? He hasn't any pre-season. I think he probably gets some minutes off the bench in game week 4, gets some more off 5, or possibly starts, and then we see him from game week 6 onwards being the number 1 guy. Because at the end of the day, if you break a record transfer, you are the main guy. You are starting most games, but it isn't for game week 4.
Yeah. That plucky underdogs Liverpool, they've got a few record transfers in their team. Gareth Davis, who are the best Sarr replacements, Hibbo?
Oh, don't say that. I think with Sarr, don't do anything straight away. You know, like, he obviously went down. It was a long game. They played in Europe, Norway in the midweek, and I think they played in a plastic pitch. So it doesn't really surprise me that they've lost a few players to injury, because they've just been overloaded by games already so far this season. Wait until closer to the next deadline. I'm in the same position myself, and I don't really want to particularly think about it, because I just brought Sarr in last week and I benched him.
Yeah, I can't believe you did that. Disgusting. Nikhil says, Grealish or Neto on wildcard, Nacho? That's an easy decision, surely.
Grealish or Neto? Chelsea's Neto?
Yeah.
Yeah, Grealish, definitely.
He smashed it, hasn't he? Grealish, 2 assists 2 weeks in a row.
He's looking good. He's got his spark back. Do
you think this is him now? Do you think we have got the old Grealish back and we are going to be seeing this all season?
I don't think we could judge that yet, but what I just love is you've got David Moyes managing, you've got shithouses at the back like Tarkowski, and you've got a front 4 of just blokes wearing their socks this high, tiny shin pads in Dewsbury Hall and Dye, Grealish, dibbling. Like, what is going on? I love it though.
Oh dear. Right, brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Like I said, we had over 500 people join us tonight, which we were not expecting in an international break. So thank you so much. I'm not sure what Hibbo's been laughing about the last couple of hours. I think he's snorted some nos at some point. Nacho, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoyed yourself, my man.
Pleasure as always, boys. Good to have the trio back. And yeah, guys, enjoy this week, because we're all going to be panicking next week. So just enjoy the first week of international and chill.
Yeah. Hibbo, thank you so much for enjoying us as well. Enjoying us. Thank you so much for joining us as well. Hope you enjoyed yourself. I
did. I don't usually read the comments in the live chat, and I've just been laughing at them for about 5 minutes, because somebody said I tried to say unconventional twice earlier in the stream. And I tripped over myself a few times, and he's been laughing about it for 20 minutes. So
who was that? Was that Frederick's son? Was it? No, Frederick's dad. Frederick's dad.
No, but good to be back. And then next week we'll obviously do our normal podcast. So.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we will be back next week for looking at our bus teams, looking at our transfers, looking at a bit of data as well, and thinking about the week ahead. Thank you so much for everybody that's joined us this evening. Thank you for the 500 people that tuned in live. Thank you if you listen on the pod, and thank you if you watch this after we've recorded as well. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you very much. We will see you all again next Tuesday, ready for the game week 4 deadline. We hope you have a lovely week and enjoy. Bye-bye.